Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is May 24th, 2017. As always, I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week on the Midweek mini podcast, we don't have on any guests. We just want to talk about the situation that just happened in Manchester. There was a terrorist attack on Monday. And we also want to get into the broader issues that Europe is having with Islamic terrorism. With that said, let's go into this Manchester thing to start it off. So, this happened at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, the United Kingdom, Monday night.
Yeah, that's right.
We were hanging out when we got the news, weren't we?
Well, it happened right before we started hanging out.
Oh yeah,
about a couple hours beforehand.
I think it was maybe like 5 here time central.
Actually, no, it was about 6:30 our time. I remember.
6:30. I don't know what that'd be UK time.
I think they're 6 hours ahead, so 5 or 6 hours ahead. So it probably was about 11:30 to 12:30 at night there.
Yeah, but this was at a concert for Ariana Grande, the pop star. There was about 21,000 people in attendance. That's what they say the size of the arena was. But the explosion didn't actually happen in the arena.
That's right. They said it happened just outside around the box office. So that's probably the reason why there were only 22 people that were killed and about 120 plus injured. If it had happened in the middle of the crowd during the concert, the death toll and injury toll would have been a lot higher than it was.
Yeah, still like a ton just for the box office area. You know, this was towards the very end of the concert, so if this guy would have been able to even wait for these people to start flooding out, he could have done it right then. The death toll could have been much higher. But, yeah, at the moment we have 22 confirmed deaths, and it looks like 119 confirmed injured persons. A lot of those are in critical condition as well. You know, when you look at these sort of Islamic terrorist attacks and whatnot, you know, the death numbers are bad, but a lot of these people that are going to be injured will be losing a limb for the rest of their life or severely impacted for the rest of their life.
I mean, it was a nail bomb attack. Like, they said it was a suicide bombing, but he had nail bombs in that. So can you imagine just being there and having not only an explosion go off, but then nails flying through the air? That's what caused most of the injuries, was people that were just standing. They weren't injured by the actual explosion, it was just the shrapnel.
I've seen video of like a woman that was there, and they were helping her on the spot, and they were like lifting up her legs, and you could see the blood dripped out of her legs. You know that something went through those, and it's just, god damn, you know, you've obviously seen some of the video that has happened, and the pictures that they have. It's really, really grotesque. And if you watch the footage of the people inside the arena, because it didn't happen there, you know, it goes off and everyone just panics.
Yeah.
And they could have easily just trampled someone trying to get out of there. It was mass chaos.
I think they said there were a few injuries due to trampling as well.
Yeah. You know, there very could have likely just been deaths inside the arena because of the chaos that went on. And, you know, people were trying to find their children in the entire mess of it all. And, you know, the people going to this concert, Ariana Grande is a pop singer. It's pretty much young girls, you know, 12, 13, 14. I mean, I like Ariana Grande. I'm a 22-year-old man, but that's not most of the fan base for Ariana Grande. But, yeah, so we do know who the bomber was, right, Bobby?
That's correct. He's been identified as 23-year-old Salman Abedi. And apparently he was known to authorities in Britain for a while. He was known to authorities.
For a while, like a year? Or?
I don't remember what the exact time frame was, but they knew who he was. He was pretty much on like one of their watch lists. He had made trips to both Syria and Libya over the last couple of years.
And they didn't stop him at all.
Right.
This guy was he's the son of a Libyan refugee or immigrant or something. So he's actually from the United Kingdom, which wasn't the guy who did that Westminster Bridge thing also born in the United Kingdom?
That's correct.
He was the son of a Pakistani, which, you know, if you look at how these cases go, it's usually not the first generation immigrants, it's the second generation that's the most dangerous. And we're going to go into stuff about that later on. But yeah. So ISIS claims that they were behind this attack, and you said that their father and brother were arrested.
Yeah, in Libya. His father and his brother were both arrested in Libya after it happened.
In response to this happening.
Right, and they said they've also arrested 5 more people that knew him over other related terrorism charges in Britain. So it's a possibility that this might have been part of a smaller terror cell that's planning more attacks. Which, when ISIS claimed responsibility, they said it was only the beginning. So hopefully we were able to deter some of that from happening. But who knows how much more is out there for people that haven't been arrested yet.
Yeah, Prime Minister Theresa May has said that the situation as far as the terror threat level goes is critical at the moment, and they've deployed 5,000 UK troops to the streets just to keep the peace at the moment. It's gotten so dangerous. Are there any other things about this Manchester thing that you have?
Well, I just wanted to point out some of the to dispel some of the fake news that was around there. There were at least one Sikh drivers who was a taxi driver who was offering to give people free rides.
Yeah, there was tweets about this.
Yeah, and he posted that on his personal Twitter account. And then a writer from Cosmopolitan magazine asked him on Twitter if she could share his story, and he gave her full permission. And then she said in her article that he was a Muslim guy.
Yeah.
Like, it was obviously, it's complete fake news at that point. The guy was Sikh, not Muslim.
Because, at this point, we're falling into such a predictable pattern with every single one of these, Once the attack happens, all of a sudden you throw up the hashtags, pray for whatever, you throw up the Facebook filters, we throw some sort of visual, and then we start coming out and saying, oh, we can't hate the Muslims or whatever. The real victims are the Muslims that are going to experience Islamophobia because of it. Not the people that, were blown to bits. No, the real victim is always the Muslims, it seems, at this point. We've been seeing that nonstop, and, it's become almost monthly now in Europe. We see these things happen. I mean, the Westminster Bridge thing was only like 2 months ago.
That was exactly 2 months to the date from the Westminster attack the Westminster attack to the Manchester attack.
It's ridiculous. And, the terrorists understand this cycle just as well as us. They predicate on our weakness. We don't have a will to, actually be hard-lined about this kind of stuff. They see how the liberals in our countries just won't even blame Muslims at all. They laugh at this kind of stuff, It's...
And what you said about dates, a lot of their attacks they like to do on the anniversaries of other attacks. For instance, earlier this year, the Westminster attack happened on March 22nd, and a year before that, on March 22nd of 2016, was the Brussels bombing.
These are some really sick guys that we're dealing with.
And also, they said that the Manchester attack happened, I believe it was on the 7-year anniversary of some earlier attack that had happened in Manchester or that area where a man was killed by a Muslim. I don't have all the facts on that, but it was on the anniversary of that happening.
Yeah, so really it's just gotten so irritating that this problem is not going away. It's definitely not going away. The threat of terrorism is here to stay. And, like I said earlier, they feel like, oh, you can't be mad about Muslims with this. Why would you be mad at Muslims about this? Like, oh, I wonder what community is spawning these suicide bombers, It's it's something else. You got something, Bobby?
Well, I just wanted to say, before we did this, we compiled a list of terrorist attacks that have happened in Europe since the beginning of 2015. And these are just major ones that made the news, not to mention smaller things or some of the crime that's happened. But there have been 17 major terrorist attacks committed in Europe by Muslims since the beginning of 2015. And in total, 360 people have been killed and almost 1,600 have been injured.
Yeah. But if you ask, Khazir Khan, the mayor of London, Terrorist attacks are just part of living in, a modern day city. It's just something you got to learn to get used to. The same Khazir Khan who won't disavow the Islamic State, which is, committing a lot of these attacks. But, you just look through the list of all these attacks. Charlie Hebdo, that was a huge one. The cartoonists, Paris, pretty much the biggest one, isn't it?
That was the biggest one. In fact, it accounts for just under 1/3 of all the deaths.
Which, immediately after that is when Trump declared his, I will stop Muslim immigration. Even they did polling in the United States of this. Banning Muslim immigration in the country was actually way more popular than Donald Trump. It had something like 67% support amongst the public after the Paris attacks. Even a third of all Democrats were down with doing it. But after Paris, we had the Brussels attacks, which that was in a metro, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was at the airport in the metro.
That was pretty grotesque. I remember seeing those videos, and it just consumes the small chasms with the dust and the explosion. Then after that, we had the Nice attack, which happened during the summer. That was
on Bastille Day. That was one of France's biggest holidays.
And that was just a guy, taking a truck straight through there. They had some AKs, I know they fired out as well. But
yeah, if you see the picture of the front of the truck, it's all littered with bullets.
Something else. What was the Wurzbach train attack?
Wurzburg was when a guy tried to stab people on the train, but I think it was some U.S. Marines or an Air Force guy who were vacationing in Europe were on the train and stopped him.
I remember, was that the guy that had the axe?
Yes.
Yeah.
He injured 4 people, but luckily there were no people killed in that incident.
Then we have the Munich shooting. I believe that was at a McDonald's in a mall.
That's correct.
I was actually getting off the plane in Baltimore to go to a thing when I saw that. I was just like, oh god, just another one. I don't know what this knife attack is, but
yeah, there's a couple more bombings, knife attack.
There was in Normandy, France. There was the attack in the church where they went and beheaded priests in front of the congregation. Sick fucks.
And then you have the big attack that happened in Berlin when a guy drove a truck through that Christmas market while people were shopping.
Yeah.
And that killed 12 people and injured almost 60. And then you have, even earlier this year, you had there was a nightclub shooting in Istanbul, and that left 39 people dead, and that was on January 1st. People were celebrating the new year when that happened.
Yeah. I forgot that one even happened, but that was a bigger one.
Yeah, when I was going through this list, I completely forgot about some of these and realized, 30 people dead? I totally forgot about that. That's almost how normal it's become, and that's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, they're just mindless numbers, mindless statistics at this point that's going to get forgotten. But then we also had the St. Petersburg metro bombing, which,
That happened on my birthday.
Really? Yeah, there was 15 killed in that one. Then the Stockholm attacks, there was 5 dead in that one. I don't remember the specifics of that one.
That was the truck driving through the crowd as well.
Oh,
that was the big one that happened there.
Oh, yeah, that's the one where the picture of the little girl who was like, her leg was decapitated away. Sick stuff. Then there's the Dortmund bus that hit the explosive outside Borussia Dortmund, the football team, the soccer team. And then in Paris, prior to the election, there was that police officer that was killed. And that pretty much just brings us up to where we are now as far as major attacks goes, which is now the Manchester one. But we wanted to get into kind of the picture of just Muslims in general in Europe and how really different they are. People don't realize how different thinking they are. We have a lot of different statistics on that. Do you want to go into it, Bobby?
Well, I first wanted to mention, you said earlier about how it's not the first generation. It's a lot of times it's the children of refugees and immigrants who do a lot of this terrorism acts. In fact, they even have just in general, not even talking about terrorism, but they have a higher crime rate than the first generation does.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it makes sense, you know. Just take it in the abstract of an immigrant comes to a country. He gets there, and you know he's so thankful he's going to work hard or whatever. But his offspring that lives there is going to be very atomized because they feel that their identity is through where their father comes from. Say he's from Pakistan, they still feel Pakistani, even though they might live in the United Kingdom. They feel alienated because they feel like they're this small group, and you know that's what makes them more radicalized. That atomization that they feel. That's what we saw with the Westminster attack. But yeah, do you want to go over the numbers specifically you have for second generation?
Well, I know that they said that in France alone, 70% of all burglaries that are committed are by second generation migrants.
70% of all burglaries in France?
Correct.
That is a huge amount of crime. Jesus Christ.
And that's just burglaries, not to mention any other crime.
And you know, with a lot of these crime statistics, you can look at them. I know in like Norway, we actually have some of these sexual offense crime
we have
statistics,
a lot of crimes. You want me to scroll down to the sexual assault ones?
Yeah, go to the sexual assault ones that we have.
Okay, yeah, I found it right here. So, actually, no, I skipped over it. Continue while I look it up.
Yeah, well, as I was gonna say, you know, Bobby, you got it.
I immediately found it. Yeah, 85% of all rapes in Sweden are committed by non-Swedish immigrants. 85%.
85%.
Half of all convicted rapists in Denmark are Muslim immigrants. 35%. Okay, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
But we have a lot more statistics of other crime as well.
Yeah, we've established a lot to really, you know, give people insight into what's happening out there. Because just, you know, a lot of people still have the idea that Europe is this, you know, great place. You know, it's like the United States. It's this westernized place. But they don't realize how quickly it's falling into a trash heap with, you know, bringing all these Muslim immigrants. You know, in Norway, in Oslo, I know this. 90% of all sexual crimes is committed by non-Western immigrants, you know.
and when you also stop to consider that a majority of all crime just in general is committed by young males. You know, if you think about it, that makes sense when 75 to 80% of all the refugees that are entering Europe are military-aged males in good health. These aren't women, these aren't children, these aren't elderly sick people. No, these are young males who are healthy.
They're people that should be staying in their countries and fighting for their countries instead of coming to Europe and raping women. But I mean, they're cowards. They don't care. They're not gonna. They leave the women behind to come to Europe. And you know, a lot of them, the term migrant or refugee, it's so wishy-washy.
We're probably going to end up using it interchangeably here, so just bear witness to that.
I predominantly use migrant. But, you know, they're allowed in under the premise of being refugees, Syrian refugees, but most of them were never coming from Syria. I believe it was only something like at most 20% of them were coming in were Syrian. I mean, a lot of these cases, it's hard to know. I mean, there's no documentation for all these countries. As much as people want to criticize Donald Trump's travel ban, hey, at least we would have tried to have some sort of way to know who's coming in. You're letting in these quote-unquote Syrian migrants, but a lot of them are coming from Afghanistan or Pakistan or Somalia or Djibouti.
And so many of the refugees as well do support, Sharia law and ISIS and other terrorist acts to begin with. Like, we have a statistic here. It says that 13% of all Syrian refugees do support ISIS.
13%.
13%. 1 in 50 Syrian immigrants are an ISIS-trained jihadist. 1 in 50. How many Syrian migrants has Europe let in? 500,000, 1 million? And you have that many, ISIS-trained fighters on European soil right now.
So if your town just let in 1,000 quote-unquote Syrian refugees, you've brought in, like, what is that, 10 ISIS fighters or whatever?
Yeah.
That's insane. I mean, I'm not doing the numbers right in my
Yeah,
head.
it's 1 in 10.
Yeah, but
20, actually, 20.
You'd let in 20.
20.
Just if you lend 1,000. I mean, like, some of these cities are bringing in, like, them on the thousands. I mean, you look back at 2015, they let in 1.5 million in. Last year, 2016, they let in 1.2 million in. I want to look up how many just Germany took, because Germany is the one that's taking the brunt of all this, actually.
And while you're looking that up, the fact is that, like we said, so many of them, they take with them their ideologies that they believe in. In fact, there was a poll that was taken. 65% of all Muslims in Europe believe that Sharia law is more important than the laws of their current country that they live in. 65%. Like, that's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. I know Germany's taking them in by the millions, so, just extrapolate that for yourself. They've let in millions of these migrants, and 1 in 50 is an Islamic State soldier.
And not only that, but, so many of them, even if they aren't necessarily trained or are part of it, a lot of them do believe that terrorist acts are justified.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got statistics from different countries here. It says that 1 in 8 Muslims in Germany believe that terrorism is justified. 1 in 8. 40% of young Muslims in France believe it's justified. 25% of Muslims in Spain believe it's justified. And 16% of Muslims in Belgium believe that's justified.
So, they don't have to be fighters themselves. I mean, they're still sympathetic, or they think these things. I mean, they always try to tout, oh, it's just a small radical number of Muslims in the world. But if you look at really the world in general, I mean, it's just Islam, They believe in Sharia law. Sharia law is pretty much what Muhammad writes down in the Quran, says this is how you live. It is extremely strict in how you're supposed to live. The way they treat women as property, and you're allowed to beat your wife, and your wife can't refuse you sex.
Yeah, a lot of you're talking about is like honor killings and honor violence.
Yeah, they believe in honor killings.
Yeah.
Or like a woman is like, if she's raped and has a baby, she can be punished for that. She's the one, not the rapist.
Yeah, and even so, 18% of young British Muslims believe that honor killings and honor violence are acceptable. And what's even worse, though, is 32% of British Muslim university students believe killing in the name of their religion is acceptable.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the United Kingdom has millions of Muslims living there. And the young people are becoming more and more radicalized. And, you look at it from the perspective of, what was it? The American Civil War was only 3% of the population fought.
If that.
If that. It wouldn't take a lot of Muslim radicals to start a revolution.
Yeah, you were referring to the Revolutionary War, but
yeah.
The point still stands.
It does not take a majority. It only takes like 2 or 3%. But if you look at where these people's sympathies lies, I mean, they already have the number to do that. They're just waiting for the event that's going to trigger it. And the way these countries are going, I mean, they could just become a Muslim nation predominantly just through time and demographics and elections.
Yeah, I mean, we have evidence right here to show that both Britain and Germany will be Muslim majority countries by 2050 if current demographic trends continue.
So that sounds so crazy, but I mean, that's something that we're going to get to see in our lifetime. And even on that tract, I mean, what is France going to be like by 2035? These Muslims are having, on average, like 4 or 5 children, to where the average, European, their birth rate is like 1.15, 1.5. The places with the worst birth rates, like Sweden, are taking in the most right now. Sweden's predicted to be a third world nation by 2025. This used to be the epitome of utopian society.
Not only that, but I mean, like you said, we're already seeing it. I mean, 1 in 12 British school children is Muslim. 1 in 12.
1 in 12.
1 in 12. 28% of British Muslims even want Britain to become a fundamentalist Islamic state in the future.
What was that?
28% of British Muslims.
28%. They come to these countries and they just create their own ghettos. They create their own little Palestines. They create their own little Damascus. They don't integrate. They just stay in their own groups, and they don't see themselves a part of their host nation.
I mean, talk about integrating. Only 33% of British Muslims, 33% of British Muslims do not speak English.
33%. You even look at London and the United Kingdom. Now, white British people are a minority in their own capital, which has been their capital for, centuries, thousands of years. The United Kingdom is the homeland of the British people, and now they don't even make up the majority of their capital city.
And 30% of Muslims in Britain don't even identify as British.
Yeah.
Not only that, only 3% of British Muslims actually support free speech.
3%.
Only 3%.
So, you can have in your mind this sort of self-denial that, they're just these moderate liberal Muslims. But when only 3% are willing to stick up for free speech, how are they supposed to fit into our society? How are they supposed to uphold our values if they don't value our values over Sharia law? Sharia law that says it's an obligation to do jihad.
And not only that, but there is a lot of anti-gay attitudes within Muslim cultures. 60% of European Muslims are explicitly homophobic.
Yeah.
Not only that, they also did a poll of 500 British Muslims. You know how many of them found homosexuality to be morally acceptable? Zero. Zero out of 500 polled.
So, bite down on that, American liberal, for a second. They are not they're not on the same wavelength as you. It's so crazy that in the United States, now Muslims are this protected class by the Democrats, and they're in the same, party as their protected LGBT, the LGBT community. Chris, who's gay, who we have on the show all the time, likes to bring this up. If Chris was to go into these communities, they'd kill him. They'd throw him off a building like they do in Saudi Arabia all the time. But still, like pedophilia is rampant in Muslim culture. Under Sharia law, there is no age of consent. You can marry at any age. They don't have any problem with, raping children, and you can see that in Rotterdam. You can look up the Rotterdam rape cases. That over the course of something like 20 years, they raped thousands of children. They groomed them in grooming gangs, which means they prepped them for sex slavery. And the authorities of the United Kingdom didn't do anything because they're afraid of being called racist. So, when you sit back and try to be all politically correct about this, hey, when you're doing that, people are suffering, people are dying, people are getting raped, they're getting sold into sex slavery. They don't fit into our societies.
And even if you're not looking at just, overall crime, 1 in 5 rape and murder suspects in Britain are immigrants, despite immigrants only being 50% of the population. So that's
50%?
They're 5% of the population, but they're 20% of all rape and murder suspects.
So they're 4 times their size in representation.
Yeah, they're 4 times more likely to be a rape and murder suspect if they're an immigrant
than the average British citizen.
Right. And the same thing is true in France. 70% of all French prisoners are Muslim.
70%.
70%. But only 12% of France is Muslim. And in general, I know we said that 1 in 5 rape and murder suspects in Britain. That's also true of just overall prisoners there, because 20% of their prisoners are Muslim.
It's something else, that this is the thing. This is a class of civilizations. This is Islam as a civilization clashing with Western civilization. And they don't want you saying that. They don't want you acknowledging that. They want you to go out and virtue signal on Facebook how tolerant you are. The Muslims don't care. They're gonna prey off your weakness. They're gonna move in, and they're colonizing Europe as we speak. As we said, these countries are going to turn Muslim very soon. And if they don't do it through violence, they'll do it through having more kids. But violence is still very likely, and a lot of it's gonna happen in the meantime.
And one of the countries I left out there was in Sweden. Now we know that Sweden has had terrible rape epidemics, and it's even known as the rape capital of the world right now, specifically because of migration and whatnot. But they said that 25% of all crime committed in Sweden is by their immigrants.
Man, and Sweden's held up as this it's the most feminist country in the world. And I know I've seen the responses by these feminist groups in Sweden. They don't put the connection of, oh, it's Muslim men, it's their culture that they're coming from is causing these rapes. It's because their toxic masculinity. It has nothing to do with their prior cultures and their crappy places they came from. No, it's because they're men.
I mean, how feminist can you be when 16% of Swedish girls are not even allowed to pick who they're going to marry?
Yeah. Women in Sharia law are not allowed to pick who they marry. Women are property. They can't leave the house unless their husband or, a male family member lets them. And they have to be escorted, and they have to be veiled. This is not neoliberal society as we know it. But we're supposed to be tolerant of this stuff in the name of equality as they come in with this overbearing scimitar of oppression. They understand this as conquest. They understand what team they're on. As you said earlier, 33% of British Muslims don't even identify as British. They see their identity as Muslim first. That's not even to say that the ones that do see themselves as British don't see being Muslim first and foremost. And, once you're a Muslim, you have to stay it for the rest of your life. Apostasy, under Sharia law, you have to be killed if you leave the faith. And most Muslims agree with that. But at the same time, they won't tell you that because there's a thing called taqiyya, to where it is ethical to lie in advocacy for Islam to the kuffars, the non-Muslims. So, you won't get them to tell you this stuff to their face, but they do believe in killing apostates.
And I just kind of wanted to go back to what you said, just in general about believing in Sharia law. 40% of Danish Muslims believe that Sharia law should be part of the country's laws, and 1 in 10 Danish Muslims want full Sharia law in the country. Yeah. 1 in 10 Muslims. I'm not sure what the Muslim population of Denmark is, but that's got to be a massively large amount of people.
Well, there was numbers that came out this week, actually, that 62% of the money that the Danish government spends actually goes to pay for these Muslim immigrants, these Muslim migrants that are coming in, even though obviously they're not 52% of the taxpayers. They get the majority of the money. And they come because they know they're going to get money. They're going to Germany and Sweden because they know they pay them out.
And a lot of them, they don't even have to get jobs. I mean, 80% of Turkish Muslims living in Germany are unemployed and on welfare.
Yeah.
And, these aren't exactly smart people either.
No.
Because we have statistics here that say that 35% of all immigrants to Sweden lack sufficient skills in reading and math.
Yeah. You think about it for a second. Sweden is always seen as the pinnacle of education. It's what we're supposed to model ourselves after. They have free college and everything. So they've been having this society, this high-trust society, where, it's highly educated. And it's been that way for decades. And then all of a sudden, you're bringing in these third world immigrants that have next to no education. They don't know the language. They're much less educated than the average Swede. And what do you do with them? How are they supposed to compete in the job market if they don't even have adequate education? You know, they have subpar communication skills. They just end up becoming subsidized. And guess what? Being, a welfare leech is preferable to what they had in their home country, so they don't feel any shame about that. They laugh at the Swedes for being weak and allowing them to do that.
And it's not just them too. Like as we said before about second generation people. I mean that ethic transfers to your children. Like even so, 64% of children born to Arabs in Copenhagen are not functionally literate. 64% of the children.
So they don't even try. They just, they don't seek to be Danes because they know that they're Muslims. They will never see themselves as Danes. This is just their place now.
Yeah, same thing in France. 40% of French Muslims do not have any French friends.
No, they're just keeping to their own. They're establishing their own enclaves. And these things are expanding. The no-go zones, as they're called. There are plenty of them. You can look this up. There are a lot in Sweden. The reporter Tim Pool, the independent journalist on YouTube, he's so great. He did a lot of this stuff in Sweden. And you go out into a no-go zone, and he went into one. And the police said, you need to get out of here, because they saw a large group of men armed, ready to go get them. The no-go zones means the police don't go there. They gave up. It's ruled by the Muslim migrants. They're dangerous places. But those places are expanding. There's more and more and more. And the thing about all this stuff is free speech doesn't really exist in Europe. You can go to jail for having anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim comments on Facebook.
Yeah, even after the Manchester attack that happened this week, there was a post on Facebook, I'm sorry, not Facebook, it was on Twitter, of someone made it just a generic, when are we going to stop this problem? It's these Muslims are causing all this crime. Someone reported that to the police, and they said they're looking into it. So she could easily get charged with a hate crime.
Oh no, you look at places, especially like Sweden and Germany, but the United Kingdom's also a really bad place. Pretty much every single one of these countries, there's case after case after case where someone just brings up any sort of criticism, they go to jail. I mean, we were talking on the show this Sunday. There was a lady in Germany who was just saying, who was complaining on Facebook about, it was either Germany or Sweden, she complained about how they're defecated in the streets. She got 4 years in jail for that.
Yeah, and not only that, I saw an article this morning, I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was a girl in Sweden who was she was being raped by some of the Muslims that lived there. I think they were obviously, they're some of the refugees. And she sprayed them in the face with pepper spray. And the police are now charging her for illegally having pepper spray because you're not allowed to have it to protect yourself. Like, she was in the middle of being raped by 3 or 4 people, and now she's the one who's going to get charged and possibly go to jail because of it.
Yeah, I remember during the Munich shootings, there was a German resident who was charged with hate speech. And I think he went to jail for 2 years because he was racially insulting the shooter. Like, he's berating the guy that's out there killing people, and he is a bad guy. Not the guy that's shooting, the people in the street. No, he's just doing that because of his situation. He's poor. His country is blown up. He's economically depraved. the delusion that these people go through, where the hate speech, the crime think is the real crime.
And that's what I'm saying. So many in the left in America here, they say they want to ban hate speech. This is exactly what they mean by it. I mean, if you say something bad about a person who just killed 20 people, you're going to jail because you made a quote-unquote racist or insensitive remark about it.
If they want to see, how great their country will be once they get rid of hate speech, they can just go look at the state of these European countries where they're doing this. And, companies like Facebook and Twitter are complicit in doing this. They are okay with, reporting you to the government for doing this. And also, it was either last week or the year before, the BBC came out with a thing that said, if you have any sort of quote-unquote hateful comment that you leave in our articles, we'll report you to your job so you can get fired. They want to destroy the lives of these people that just want to say, hey, there's a problem, we need to do something about it. But it seems like these governments just want them to, die and go away and be replaced.
I mean, yeah, we do have evidence that they are not doing anything about it. In France, of all the rejected asylum seekers that were there, 96% of all the rejected asylum seekers in France are still living in France. They haven't been removed yet. They haven't done anything about it.
No, they don't support them. I mean, in France in particularly, we were really hoping Marine Le Pen could win, so maybe they would have a chance of doing anything. But now that Emmanuel Macron's in, they're going to stay in the European Union. The European Union is the conduit which is sending all these migrants in. And you look back, the European Parliament President Antonio Tajani, he claimed that something as million as 30 million migrants could be heading into Europe. 30 million, and you look at how the migrant crisis has gone, they've only taken in maybe 4.55 million. How are they supposed to survive 30 million? You can't just continuously flood your country with these low-skill third worlders that they're pretty much just like Stone Age, Bronze Age people. But it's so mean to call it what it is. They're not the same as us. I'm sorry. It seems pretty demonstrable at this point that a lot of them think very differently, that are very juxtaposed with how we live our lives in the West.
I was going to say, there was also some of those studies that were showing that isn't Africa expected to have 1 billion people by
the end of this
century?
Yeah.
And if you have Europe just keep letting people in like that,
Or, well, it's not 1 billion by the end of this century. I believe it's 4 billion.
Yeah, I think they do already have 1 billion.
Yeah, they have around 1 billion at the moment. But about by the end of the century, the majority of the population of the world will be Africa. These migrants from Africa coming up, a lot of them are from Africa. It's never going to stop. They're just going to keep coming until Europe is destroyed, where they can just... and you look back, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago when Lauren Southern got arrested trying to just stop one of those German NGOs that was bringing them in. These NGOs, these nonprofits do illegal stuff. They coordinate with these human traffickers in Libya to bring them in. And, like Gaddafi said, if you got rid of me, the floodgates of Africa will be open. And that's exactly what's happened. I always like to refer people to the video with open gates. I know you've seen it, Bobby, as well. And just the sheer horror of these hordes of men coming into these countries. You look at what happens in Greece, where they're letting them in and they just take over their cities. They just march through like armies and they just attack the people like it's nothing. You look at the trains of trash that they leave behind. It's crazy. And the only places that aren't experiencing these terrorist attacks are Poland or Hungary, where they just don't let any in. But at the same time, the European Union says, hey, we're going to have to put economic sanctions on you if you don't start taking them in. You're required to under the EU. But even then, it's more preferable to have the economic sanctions than let in the migrants that are going to destroy your economy anyways.
I mean, if you think about it, just the economic impact that refugees, the negative impact that they're having, Poland's kind of, they're doing fine without them. So you're literally saying, oh, we're going to put sanctions on you. We're going to take money away from you to help pay for our own problems.
Yeah, and you look at the cost of how much this is costing Germany just to maintain all these migrants. It's in the billions. I mean, I'll look it up right now just quickly. Yeah, it looks like just for 2017, They're looking to spend something like 37 billion pound, which in dollars that'd be around like 45 billion dollars, and it's just not sustainable. I mean, we were talking on the show last week that they're confiscating houses from German citizens just to try to house these migrants. There's no housing market to accommodate all these people. It's incredibly bad currently in Sweden. They're running out of places to put these people. But I mean, summer's coming, means the water's warming up. They're going to start coming more and more on these boats. And it's crazy because if you look at how the people in these countries perceive it still, they're very still in support of the European Union open borders. Say in Germany, one of the worst off countries that's, experiencing all this, still something like 2/3 of people support open borders. The people aren't going to wake up to this stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention this earlier, but you bring up a good time now. 1 in 50 Germans are sympathetic to ISIS.
1 in 50.
1 in 50 Germans. And it's even worse. 15% of everyone living in France
supports ISIS.
Supports ISIS. Which, I think, what did we say, that, was it 12 or 14% of France is Muslim right now?
Yeah.
So granted, that's not going to entirely go hand in hand, but there's definitely a correlation there.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at just Islam in general, it is a religion of conquest. Don't fall for this religion of peace bullshit. It's a religion of conquest. If you just look at the map of, how it's spread out, Islam, from its birthplace in Arabia, it's all through conquest. This is all it's ever been. The Islamic State, ISIS, is just doing what Islam commands, the creation of a caliphate. And these people that are supporters of ISIS, that are sympathetic to ISIS entering Europe, they want the caliphate to come to Europe. And they do look towards the future saying, yes, this will be part of the caliphate of Europe. Where we are now will be part of the caliphate of Europe. I like to bring up the Tim Pool thing again. Tim Pool, he did an interview with, I believe it was a Somalian or a Syrian that was in an apartment complex in Sweden. And the guy says, the immigrant says, if you ask the people around that live here, about 85% come from the Islamic State. Yeah, they're Syrians. 85% of the people in a building, an apartment complex in Sweden. Could you imagine even living in the same city as that? The crime that comes from that, the risk that puts you at? Something else. But I mean, people are going to end up killing themselves with this stupid liberal thinking that allows this stuff because we have to be so tolerant. Guess what? Tolerance is not a supreme virtue. Tolerance at the end of the day, if you have too much of it, it's just going to be weakness. It means that your society doesn't stand for anything. It's going to tolerate bullshit. So, do you have any other things to say, Bobby?
Well, I just wanted to say one more statistic which we didn't look at, and that's about Pakistanis that are living in Britain. 55% of Pakistanis that are living in Britain are married to their cousins.
Oh, God.
So
they really keep it within the family.
Yeah.
If you look at, how inbreeding goes, Arabs are actually one of the most inbred populations there is. Up there with, Jews as well, but that's a whole different subject we don't want to go into. But, yeah. I think I said all I want to say. If you have any other things, Bobby. Otherwise, we're at about the 50-minute mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there is evidence to show that almost half of Muslims in the Middle East are inbred.
Almost half? God. That must have to do something with behavior at some point. I mean, how it genetically chooses traits if you inbreed that much. It's not a good thing. But, yeah, I've been just spitballing and going off the top of my head because I know a lot of the stuff already, and we did prepare a lot of statistics to talk about. But I guess just in closing, I want to say, it's important to at least put this stuff out there. You can condemn us for being Islamophobic. I'd admit probably I am. But hey, at least we are trying to say what's actually going on instead of being like the Europeans in these countries that are trying to censor themselves from even seeing this. Because, like I said before, this is a class of civilizations, and the Muslims understand that. If you're not willing to understand that, be ready to be a victim. You have anything else to say, Bobby?
No.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we're going to close up the episode. We're still going to have the Sunday show. We have a new guest on. I think she's going to be a real good guest, a good close friend of me and Bobby's. And, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.